I'm Julie. I'm one of the staff on at Orchestraight. Work on all the customer experience, fun stuff in the background. So welcome to the Mastermind Series, which is powered by Orchestraight. Kind of think of Orchestraight as your AI plus neural strategy sidekick for business growth. It's all around business development, the things that people typically hate doing. And Beau is going to talk about one of the things around business development. So Orchestrate helps you know your clients, find the right opportunities, and make smarter moves. And we have a 7-day free trial today. So go ahead and grab yours at orchestrate.com. And I will be sending out an email with this information to everyone that registered and our Orchestrate members as well. You'll get a copy. I'll give you the recording itself so you can listen to that, or if you didn't join us live, you can listen to it, and I'll give you some key findings from Beau. So let me introduce Beau Billington. He is the founder of Free Agent, which is an agency that provides access to a vetted bench of battle-tested experts that work directly with technology companies in hypergrowth. The executive leaders have background in sales, marketing, technology, operations, and finance, and are available as a fractional, interim, or a full-time basis. The Free Agent works across a multitude of industries and disciplines with a key focus on companies with revenue growth ranging from 6 million to 50 million. So welcome, Beau. Thanks for joining Orchestrate and everyone that is joining us live and to watch the recording afterwards. I'll hand it off to you.
Excellent. Super glad to be here. Thanks so much, Julie. Thanks to the team at Orchestrate. Today, going to talk a little bit about ideal client profile, which seems to be a pretty hot topic these days, particularly in the fractional space. Prior to doing so, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of who I am, company, just in brief, and then we'll talk about the do's and don'ts about ideal client profile, while it's important, some best practices, and then we'll do an actual live kind of demo of how we leverage AI to kind of further build out an ICP as well as profile for folks that are entering the fractional space. So first and foremost, who am I? So I founded a company called The Free Agent 8+ years ago. We typically work with high growth tech companies, historically B2B SaaS, B2C SaaS, professional services, and then most recently private equity and VC backed organizations. I started the company when fractional wasn't a thing, to be candid, and fast forward through COVID, the baby boomers retiring, and now it's quite the rage, for better or for worse. And there's also a lot of noise in the market, which is why the ICP is so important. But generally, revenue-wise, companies we work with 6 to 30 or 40 million, larger clients and smaller clients, but that's where I've found the real sweet spot is in the fractional space. And we work across a couple silos. So sales and marketing, tech and product, operations and finance. In regards to the fractional workforce, just a quick few data points. The space is growing. I kind of alluded to this a minute ago that some of that's from Generation X and Y, but then also the baby boomers retiring. And then of course, COVID, COVID changed the relationship with the employee and the employer for better, in my opinion, in some regard. But the fractional space is growing as a result of some of those catalysts. And, it's estimated last year, 120,000 folks in the fractional space, which is a steep increase from 2020. Also to adoption from a company's perspective has grown substantially, and that's slated to increase this year as well to 35% of all businesses having leveraged or worked with a fractional executive. So the space is growing. If you think about the growth curve, I don't think we're quite hockey stick, but I do believe we're starting to round the curve. In the next 15 to 18 months, there'll be a tremendous amount of growth. With that being said, that underscores the importance of having a strong ICP or ideal client profile. And I talk about this quite often on LinkedIn, some other outlets. And I'm a big proponent on ICP, particularly as the market becomes more and more crowded. There's more people in the market, there's more noise than ever. And so the clearer you can be on one's ICP and what that is, who's an ideal client and who's not an ideal client, the better. To me, this is the blueprint of your perfect customer, and all business development activities should reside around your ICP. And so, part of the ICP is there a problem exists, and that you can help overcome that problem for your target clients. And lastly, I like to think of it as a Venn diagram, and maybe I should have put one in the graphics, but it's kind of that intersection of like passion, background, and expertise. To me, in the center is really the magic of an ICP. Why does it matter?
I'll just jump in real quick.
Yeah. Anything, by the way, I want this to be interactive. So any questions, please.
Yeah. And so because this is a webinar, unfortunately we can't get anyone live on here. So you just got Beau and my beautiful face here. But please go ahead and throw things in the Q&A. We'll see, I'll be seeing those, and then I will interrupt just like I am right now to Beau with that. But I love what you say about the ideal client. And I like the Venn diagram, because everything, I'm a customer experience person. So everything really does focus in and centers around the client. So I just wanted to throw in there that I love that you're recognizing that.
Well, I appreciate that. I would imagine you would then. And, one thing I do want to underscore here as well on the slide is that it should be based on research, and this shouldn't be an easy exercise. I mean, I'm going to try to help fast track it a little bit. But this should be difficult, and it should evolve. And I've seen my ICP evolve just in the last 6 months. And it's evolved substantially over the last 8 years. So why does it matter? I mentioned the market is more crowded, muddier water. Also too, a lot of folks that I talk to, within the fractional space, first question is, what do you do and for whom, and why does it matter? And oftentimes I'll hear, well, I can do anything for anyone. It doesn't matter the size or the industry. And that's a scenario where you've told me everything and nothing at the same time. And, people want to put people in boxes. And I found that's the easiest way to think. And so the ICP actually puts one in a box, and it helps to differentiate you from the other folks that actually don't have an ICP and claim that they can do everything for everybody. And I think this old adage reigns supreme, but a jack of all trades is a master of none. And your brand should be very, very clear and distinct. And when I talk about brand, it should be your ICP, but also your digital property, anything that represents you and the work that you do. It should ward off, companies that are not your ICP and welcome in those that are your ICP. And it should be that succinct. So what are the components of a strong ICP? And we'll go through an exercise here in a second, but specific skill set, target industries, again, being very, very prescriptive about that. Do you focus on manufacturing, or do you focus on software? And then niching down from there. Ideal clients, like what are some perfect ideal prospects that you've identified that can represent your ICP? I think that's good part of the exercise. Key challenges experienced. And the reason key challenges are important, because the backdrop to that needs to be not nice to haves, right? They need to be must haves, in my opinion. Now, maybe 2 to 3, 4 years ago, when there was a lot more money in the economy, companies were doubling down on nice to haves, but a lot of those funds have dried up, and companies are focusing on like mission critical items. And I would center my ICP around that, if at all possible. And also too, like, where do you have domain expertise? And I'm not suggesting one can't reinvent themselves and jump across industries, or, create a new service offering. That's totally a possibility. But centering your offering around where you have domain expertise gives you credibility instantly and can be your superpower from an ICP. And lastly on this slide, and Julie, I'm sure you have some questions for me, at least hopefully. I like to distill it down to a basic level of like, I do X for Y and Z are the results. Now, that's not my original thought. I ripped that off from somebody. I don't recall whom, unfortunately. But I think it's a great exercise, and that's how succinct your messaging and value prop should be.
Yeah, keep it simple, right? As a newer business owner myself, I have a consulting arm for my customer experience company, but I would say ICP was the hardest thing for me to identify, because I was one of those people, Beau, where I was like, well, I can help any industry, really. I mean, everybody needs customer experience help, right? But when I found very quickly, I would say within the three months of me being on LinkedIn and doing videos, like, I was really talking to no one. Right. So I was trying to talk to everybody. And so I learned very fast through data that I needed to niche down and specifically talk to the one that had a key challenge that I knew that I could with. And since then, and you mentioned this, I think this is really, really important to hit home on, is people just don't have like all this money to spend on whatever, all those nice to haves that you mentioned. And that's not the state of the economy today. And so many customers that I've worked with right now are like, they have budget to spend on like 3 key priorities at their company, not 10. And so if you don't fit into one of those key challenges that they're experiencing and can solve it, so having that awareness, I think, is really key, Bo, because I'm seeing and experiencing that quite a bit as fractional myself.
Yeah, and you're not alone, and kudos to you for figuring that out fast. I mean, when I started my company 8 years ago, it took me 6 months to get my first paying customer. Ironically, they're the first customer that I fired. That's a different story, but
That
they
happens.
what that
I said, yes, that happens too.
it does happen. But, 8 years in, again, I kind of alluded to this earlier, like, we've changed our ICP again within the last 6 months, and it's something that it's fluid. A lot of it does tie to the state of the economy or trends, right? And AI is a big trend right now. It's very disruptive. And I think if it's not on your radar, it should be. But keeping a keen eye on what's changing with your customer base, what's changing kind of within your skill set is a big part of it. And it's a very, very fluid thing, but it's critical. And much to your point, Julian, if companies don't have these huge budgets, and if you don't fit within kind of that must have mission critical, need, you're going to fall to the wayside. Moving into specific ICP questions, and listen, Julie's going to send this out as well as with a few different prompts, and we'll actually do a real exercise using ChatGPT here shortly. But these are questions that I created that I believe help folks kind of think about their ICP at a high level. It's meant to come across as remedial. It's meant to be this high level 30,000-foot exercise, but this is something that I've learned organically over the last 8 years, and I'm definitely trying to help save some folks some time, because it is time consuming, but it takes being focused and putting in the work. So in regards to some of the questions, like target industry, again, critical. Is it SaaS? Is it manufacturing? Is it some other industry? But be precise, as precise as possible. Avoided industries. I think this is important as well. Tobacco is one of those that always pops up and people send me their results. Company size. I mean, again, is it the 0 to 10, 10 to 30, 50 to 100? And that nuance really, really matters, because those are typically different people. Ideal customers. Do you have a subset of like prospects or companies you've worked for that fit your ICP precisely? What do they look like? Key challenges, again, tying back to not being a nice to have. What are the challenges that they face currently that you can address and fix? Team structure, we'll get into that in a minute, but do they have a team? Do they have infrastructure, or is it complete is it wide open white space? Or solutions, right? Like, what solutions can you offer into the marketplace that can solve the problems which these companies have? Top services, I think it's important to distill. I can do anything down to like 2 to 3 different service offerings that you can offer to a company where you've already thought through the engagement model, the pricing, and what that looks like, as well as the output. Output is super important when talking about fractional, because it can be a bit nebulous and unclear. Engagement preference, right? Is this an interim engagement? Is this a fractional engagement, a consulting engagement? To me, there's a little bit of the difference between those. But what does that look like? Clarity is important. Ambiguity kills deals. Starter service, again, little insight into what a starter service could look like. So once you have this, and I'll give you an example of what that looks like here in a moment, there's some very, very easy prompts that you can leverage within ChatGPT or some other AI tool. Here's an example of what I typically use as an AI prompt. So I'll take the ICP, I'll show you this in a second. So I take the prompt in the ICP, and it kind of, shows a little bit of magic, and it helps to enhance it. From there, I generally ask the AI engine to help create a LinkedIn summary. And the reason I kind of do this in the parallel order is because, to me, it's important that the LinkedIn profile matches the ICP closely. So when somebody sees your digital assets, they're pretty uniform across the board. And then lastly, AI outreach. What messaging that could potentially resonate with my ICP, based upon kind of my executive summary, et cetera. Now, the caveat to all this is that, of course, AI engines, ChatGPT, the data that they do pull oftentimes is not correct. It needs to be sanitized, but this can really short circuit a few things. Julie, I don't know if you have any questions on that.
No questions so far. So just a reminder, use the Q&A, ask anything. I love to interrupt Beau, and he loves to be interrupted because he wants it to be as interactive as possible. So even if it's a basic question that you think is not worth asking, please ask it.
Thank you. And let me find the ICP. So here's an example of an ICP. This is not anybody, this is not a real person. I did create this. But one of the biggest mistakes that I see when folks are sending me their ICP, and I love to review them and I'm happy to help enhance them, but they don't go deep enough. It's one word answer: target industry, manufacturing. That tells me nothing, right? Avoided industries, not as important maybe as company size, but the more precise you can be, the better. So here's a quick example, and we're going to go through this. We're going to burn through this very quickly. But target industries, I mean, here's a few bullets. Obviously, they thought about it: AI, ML, fintech, cloud infrastructure, a little bit more context than just B2B SaaS. It's niched down a little bit further. Company size, 15 to 30 million. To me, that's a really nice bracket, like 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, et cetera. Companies now, with all the influx of fractional executives, the grouping has gotten very, very tight. So companies are less likely to hire somebody that doesn't have their specific talents at their specific size. So something very, very important to think about. Ideal customers, I mean, again, this talks about the funding round. I think that's important. Are they A? Are they a B? Are they a C? I've seen A through D. I think that's, again, a recipe for disaster. You need to be much clearer than that, in my opinion. Key challenges, right? This is start talking about kind of what are the ICP actually experiencing, and this could be a trigger for folks in your network to help suss that out and make referrals for you. Again, this is very, very important part of the equation. Team structure for this one, I'll call it out, but it's like a controller, senior accountant. They've got a bookkeeper, but there's not a CFO. So to me, being very, very clear and prescriptive there makes sense. Core solutions, give it some thought around what those look like. Top services, engagement preference, and then starter service. So again, the deeper you can be on the ICP, the more beneficial for you as well as your profile. Does that resonate? Any questions there?
Yeah. So one question is around the key challenges, Beau.
Mhm.
So what if you're just starting your business, whether you're a consultant, a solopreneur, a fractional?
Mhm.
Um, what if you like, do you do some research, or how do you do research to find the key challenges for your ICP? So let's say somebody knows who their ICP is. Like, how do they hone in on the top 3 to 4 challenges? Do you go talk to them as
Great
a
question.
new person, or like what would the advice be from you?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I mean, that's why I'm also a believer in that Venn diagram. So, hopefully you're starting where you already have a little bit of domain expertise. So you've got a bit of a basic understanding as to what's going on within that industry as well as that skill set. But you brought up a really good question. When I first started my company, I spent a lot of time with people who were not potential buyers. It was smart people, and I respected their opinion, but they knew nothing about the actual industry which I was trying to target. And so my biggest takeaway in that regard is have conversations with people who could actually potentially buy your solution in the future. They're going to have the most relevant information, but also too, you could turn them into a customer in the future. And candidly, it's usually a pretty soft sell. Like, hey, I'm thinking about providing the service into the market. I'd love to spend 5 minutes with you due to X, Y, Z. Will you talk to me and try to poke holes in what I'm putting together? I mean, that's a really easy win. And oftentimes folks will be willing to speak to you, especially if they're in your network already.
I like that. I have really good luck asking people for advice, right? Using term advice because people love to give it. And when I started my business 2 years ago, I couldn't believe how willingly people were to sit down with me just to talk about, ideas or, things to stay away from, that centered around the ICP. It was really fun.
No, totally. People love to illustrate how smart they are and will gladly take time out of their day,
Yeah.
kind of share their brilliance with the world. And it's an easy thing, right? Like, I'm not asking,
Yeah.
it's not a sales call. Like, tell me why this is a bad idea, and most people will take time out of their day to do just that.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so I'm going to shift gears here, and we're going to go through just an actual exercise, just to kind of illustrate how ChatGPT or some of the other tools can be leveraged. So again, you can use AI, you can use Orchestraight. There's a myriad of tools out there, and this is not a fail safe. Like, this still requires a human component, but it can definitely fast track some things. So what I typically do, and I'll do this for folks. I'm going to start charging for it, but generally once they fill out their ICP, they share it with me. I will go into ChatGPT. I will add a prompt, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but here's my ideal client profile and just some requests, and I'm going to ask it to polish it up to enhance it. Also create kind of a client-facing summary, and then provide me 10 US-based companies that fit that ICP. Okay, then I drop in the ICP and let it do its thing. And again, Julie will send this out. She mentioned, so you can easily use it. It takes a little bit of time. I've got a paid for version, so supposedly goes a little bit deeper. But the data seems to be a lot better now than it was just 6 months ago. And here's kind of the output, right? So polished and detailed ICP, again, a layer deeper than what I created with some additional thoughts. The good thing about AI engines, they can often triangulate some commonalities and themes that the human brain can't. So I think it's pretty powerful to put it in here. I'm not going to run through this. I think you can kind of understand through a quick scroll. But it also created a one-page summary. Again, this needs to be looked at, but this is a starter kit, right? A good starting point to potentially send to clients or folks that may spend time with you. And then this is what I think is pretty powerful, right? I asked it to grab 10 US-based companies under 50 million that fit my ICP. Now, again, you've got to sanitize this list. But if you actually were to go through this list and sanitize it to some regard, you could put this back in ChatGPT and ask for it to go find you 10 or 15 more people, and then you can do your own due diligence and research. But to me, this is a super, super powerful tool. And then it also already created some email templates that reference your ICP as well as your skill set that can be shared. We'll go through a couple more exercises and then we'll pause. And happy to answer any questions. So. So next, I typically put in a LinkedIn prompt, and this is quite powerful as well, because again, it has your ICP in mind, which has a bit of your executive summary, and it's really important from my perspective that your LinkedIn profile and your digital assets are all pretty tied together with similar message. Again, similarly, this needs to be gone through, but this is short-circuiting a tremendous amount of time by leveraging these tools. And here's an about section that could be leveraged, as well as I asked it for it to create an experience section based upon my ICP that ties back to the fractional work in which I do into the market. Needs to be sanitized, but could save a lot of time. And then lastly, I will ask it to do outreach prompts. Outreach is quite different because outreach, in my opinion, is changing real time. And I'm a big proponent of referral-based outreach. But this also can give some great thoughts in regards to your ICP, your background, your LinkedIn profile, and then kind of tying those assets together so your messaging is very, very concrete and succinct. So again, here's just a couple templates that I created: results-led approach, insight-led approach, conversational approach. And I realize Orchestraight can do this as well. And, I'm sure Julie has some information concerning some best practices, but I just wanted to share like how your ICP is not all about just your ideal client profile. It can be used for so many more things now with some of the tools that are out there, but it starts with effort.
This is fantastic. And don't anyone worry about like trying to capture what Beau is doing, because we're going to send out those prompts that you can utilize in any AI platform, like you mentioned. But we do have a question in the Q&A. So let me read it to you, Beau.
Yeah.
It says, from a lead gen standpoint, how can your ICP best identify what initial offering might help with conversations?
Oh, so that's a good question. So again, I think that comes back to having conversations with friendlies, with folks that are in your ICP, and this is a lot of work, right? So somebody who just starts the fractional practice, typically what I say is your ICP is your cornerstone, and that starts with a hypothesis, an assumption, but it's something that you're kind of building out. Once you have that, then you need to go into the market and test your hypothesis, right? And having conversations with smart people, but also potential buyers who could potentially buy from you in the future, but represent your ICP. And they're the ones that I believe are going to give you a lot of the insight into initial offerings that should be leveraged or maybe put into the marketplace. But that's I think the best practice versus I have a thought and I don't know if it's going to work. And I've done a lot of I've spent a lot of good money after bad, and I've also made a lot of hypotheses, and I found, having your offering vast in truth is the easiest, most cost effective, and timely thing one can do.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Someone asked the same question that I was going to ask you. So look at that. How often would you recommend updating your ICP?
So I would investigate it at least every 3 to 6 months. I typically have been more reactive with our ICP. Like I realize maybe sales are falling, conversations are falling, something's happening in the market where maybe we're not getting the results and the responses that we're used to, and then reactively trying to manipulate our ICP and update it. I would highly suggest folks look at it more proactively every 3 months, every 6 months, so they're on top of trends versus the inverse, was where I've historically been. Have been forced to redefine or reconfigure my ICP.
Yeah, I like when you're talking about when you're working with the clients. Once you have a couple clients that you're working with, go back into your ICP and say, okay, is this resonating still?
Oh,
The clients I'm actually working with right now.
okay. But what worked, what didn't work, and then
Right.
also too, I mean, this is unsolicited, but for me, the majority of the referrals I've gotten are from past clients, and some are proactive. By and large, most aren't, just because they're busy. They're not thinking, how can I help out Beau or the free agent? But
Mhm.
if you go back and ask, you may be surprised as to how many doors that can open, because typically your ICP knows more folks that are in your ICP.
Yes, so good. You mentioned outreach is changing in real time, so maybe that's like another mastermind. Because that got my ears perking. It
Yeah,
definitely, I've seen a huge shift
100%.
in trying to connect with my ICP. Even on LinkedIn, it's completely
Yeah.
changing, right?
Yeah, it's really insane, and I think this is an unintended consequence of AI. To be honest with you, my inbox is inundated, both email as well as my LinkedIn, and if mine's inundated, so are my prospects. Right? It's really that simple. And so I've tried to get scrappy and figure out, like, what can I do differently. And maybe this is another mastermind, but I have found referrals by and large being very, very prescriptive on, like, your ICP, asking for a referral, putting in the time needed to ask for an appropriate referral is
Mhm.
critical. And then also leveraging LinkedIn to go back to friendlies and referrals from the past and re-engaging in conversation, because you're a known entity. I found that's a heck of a lot easier than going in cold. And the last 4 deals that we've worked on have actually been referral based, but from folks that I was referred to on LinkedIn that I went back to, 3 months, six
Smart.
months, a year later, and re-engaged in the conversation.
Yeah, it takes time, but it's time well served. That's for sure. Referrals. Most of our businesses are probably based on referrals, right?
Yeah, and if it's not, maybe you need to look at your level of service, right?
It's true. Yes. All right, Beau, where can we find you? Where can, if someone's interested in talking more to you or finding out more about the free agent, how can they do that?
Sure. So I appreciate the ask. So the name of the company is The Free Agent at thefreeagent.com. Don't ask me how I got that URL. And then Beau Billington, BeauBillington at LinkedIn, probably the two easiest ways. And then I'm
Okay.
happy to get emails. It's Beau at thefreeagent.com.
Okay, good. I'll include that too in the email that everyone will receive. So if you missed that, don't worry, don't fret. Beau mentioned, there's a lot of different AI tools out there, ChatGPT being one of them, Orchestraight being one of them. Orchestraight actually has ICP exercise. Whether you know yours today or you are just starting out, it's the key prompt that you start with. So
Love it.
definitely resonates with what Beau is saying. Orchestrate has a 7-day free trial. I'll include that in the email as well. So you can actually build out your ICP just like Beau was talking about. So any final parting words, Beau?
No, I greatly appreciate the opportunity here from you, Jake, as well as the team at Orchestrate. Happy to be a resource for any of the folks that are out there struggling. I mean, my hope is that if anything resonates from this message, it's like, hey, start at the ICP, validate it, make some assumptions, but validate those assumptions, and then go to market and see what works, see what doesn't, iterate and do more of what works, less of what doesn't. So
Yes,
that's the
just
opportunity.
start, right? That's the key.
Yeah.
Try something, start.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Beau. Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure seeing you again. With
Likewise.
but success, and thank you everyone for joining us.